So I just wanted to share that with you. Okay, real quickly, we'll look at the residential customer charge compared to the rest of the TVA distributors. I know you've seen this chart several times before. It has been updated. And I'll point out that currently we're at $10. So we're 113th out of 156. So still relatively low. What we're proposing for the board to take action on would increase that $2, $1 this fall, $1 next fall. So by late 2012, we would be at $12. And you can see, and it's current compared to the rest of the valley currently, we would be just slightly above the median and actually 50 cents below the average. Now, I'll point out, if we come back and look at this time next year, it's going to be dramatically different as far as everybody else will have shifted upward. We looked at this last summer when we had our 2% margin or rate adjustment. Where were all these values then? The average then was $10.70. So it's moved almost $2 in 12 months. And that means that distributors across the valley have been raising rates and raising their customer charges in particular, and we expect that to continue as well. So just from a comparison perspective to share that with you. And then also from the electric, I did want to show you how our monthly residential bill compares with the other largest TVA distributors. So you can see where it is now, where it would be in 2 years, and how that compares. The bills are broken down into components. The red is the customer charge. The dark yellow is the commodity or usage charge. And you can see that the bills span from a low of $84 with Huntsville to $101.50 roughly with Volunteer Electric Cooperative. We are currently third lowest at $90.48. If with the two increases that we've talked about, and again, we're going prospectively here, by the end of 2012, we'd be at $92.48, and our ranking position would not change. We would remain third lowest. But again, just like we talked with the customer charges, over that period of time, there's going to be a shift to the right. Well, there's going to be an upward shift, probably for all these distributors. Huntsville, for example, we know they're going to have some increases coming. I don't know if you saw in the press that they've discovered that they've actually underpaid TVA over $30 million over an extended period of time. So they have to make that up and pay that back to TVA. And they've commented that they'll definitely need a rate increase to address that. So I guess the bottom line is that you can see, even with the two adjustments that we're proposing, we'll still be the third lowest. And if we look at this in a couple of years, we may well be the lowest or second lowest. So still competitive.
Mark,
yes.
If we, and I'll relate this to water too, but we're doing Century 2 program. Would we consider that a fairly aggressive program in terms of other providers, distributors? I mean, when you look at the others, are there other distributors that would be as aggressive as this program would be?
That's a good question, and I don't know if I can fully answer it. I would be speculating somewhat. I'd like to say yes, but I don't know for sure. But that's something we can follow up on, see what we can find out.
But I will say nationally, correct me if I'm wrong, everyone is dealing with the aging infrastructure. Some may or may not have developed their plans and are kicking them off yet, but everybody is eventually going to confront the issue.
I know we've done a lot of written about the water situation, but I assume it's not that much different for electric in some ways. So
You wouldn't think.
And the reason I ask is I mean, I guess we consider this sort of an aggressive approach to our infrastructure. I just wondered if others are taking a similar tack, and then correspondingly, I mean, they're going to have to raise rates just the same as we are.
It's a very good question, and I guess just from what I've contacts and what I've heard, I'm not aware of specific programs that may be we are as aggressive with respect to some of the components that we have, but I don't know that for a fact. It is based somewhat on speculation. Okay. Commissioners, we'll move on and talk about water, and this is the water counterpart to the electric chart I showed you earlier. Basically, where are the additional funding going for water? Where is it going? And you can see primarily it is main replacement for water. It is increasing the rate of replacement, in particular for galvanized main, and also somewhat for cast iron main. But basically, we're going from currently, or in the base plan, replacing 10 miles per year of water main to replacing 17 miles of water main per year. And that's what that additional funding is going for, the additional $4 million per year. So how will the water system look different in 10 years? Well, we certainly expect to have a significant reduction in our water loss to stop that upward trend and to begin to take it back down. And the primary reason in doing that is taking all the galvanized pipe out of the system. And we'll be able to do that with this plan by 2020. And as you may remember from Julie's presentation, the recent water leak survey that we've had indicates that galvanized is the main culprit in the leakage on our system and our water loss ratio. So getting that completely out of the system can only help in that regard. And then also, if you just look at 2021, we'll have a newer system with all the new pipe we'll be putting in or replacing. Currently, it's about 50-50, 50% old pipe, 50% new pipe. At the end of 10 years, it'd be 2/3 new pipe and 1/3 old pipe. So just like with electric, we would expect to have a more efficient, reliable water distribution system in 10 years. Okay, with respect to funding, just like we did with electric, we have made several modifications. In particular, we'll talk about the debt first. We are increasing that maximum debt ratio for water from 40% to 50% in the case of water. Currently, it's around 38%. We're also going to be extending the debt maturities from the traditional 20 years to 30 years on water as well. And whereas on electric, we decided we did not need to reduce or shouldn't reduce that coverage ratio, on water, we think we have the flexibility to do that. So we'll be taking it from 2.25 or greater to 2.00 or greater in water. And those three changes together allow us to issue an additional $30 million in water bonds over the next 10 years. And just like electric, that's $30 million you don't have to get from your ratepayers over that period of time. And that translates to about $20 less in a residential water bill each year. So about $200 over 10 years, which can make a difference. So more debt, more flexibility to use more debt. Just like with electric, we're also proposing annual rate adjustments. For water, they're designed to add an additional 5% in annual water revenue. Now, once we get to the full plan, you'll see there's one exception to that. About 5 years out, we'll need to have a rate adjustment higher than 5%. And I'll point that out when we get to the spreadsheet here in just a moment. But what does that mean to the average residential water customer or the residential water customer? Just like with electric, it will add $1 to the monthly bill each year. Currently, the monthly bill is $16.45. So that would increase over time. And just like with electric, we're proposing to add that to the monthly customer charge for the first 3 years. So that's what we're proposing the board take action on in August. Electric, it would be 2 rate actions. Water, it would be 3. And we're thinking that these would be effective in January of each respective year. So January 2012, January 2013, and January 2014. That's $1 to the monthly bill in the form of the customer charge. Any questions on that? Okay, we'll look at the full spreadsheet and just point out a few things. Again, like electric, you can see the dollars that we're adding. With respect to the orange, the debt, we'll actually have a bond issue next fiscal year, $25 million. And then just like electric, one every other year. What does that do to the debt ratio? Our new target is 50% or less. you can see it steadily increases. It actually, the high point is 48.1% in 2017. On the debt coverage, 2.0 or greater is our new target. You can see the first 5 years, for several years, we're actually below that, but we're relatively close for most of those years. And we'd be trending up and actually be, for 4 of the last 5 years of the plan, above the 2.0. And I think that's appropriate. I think that's okay. With respect to the rate adjustments, you see the 5% annually. In 2015-16, it would need to be higher. It would need to be 10%. And then we can go back to the 5% each year. For the monthly residential bill, $1 added to that each year. In 2015-16, it would double and be $2 for that particular year. So over the course of the 10 years, the average residential water bill would go from $16.45 to $27.45. And just like the electric plan, we discussed this with our financial advisor to see if there would be any impact on the bond rating. Now, I won't kid you, this is a little bit tighter than it is with electric, but we don't think there would be any downgrade associated with these recommendations. Another thing to point out that we talked about in the workshop, and I omitted it in looking at the electric plan, even though we're at 48%, once we get, we'll end at 46%, once we get beyond this window of time, as far as maybe large additional capital projects, we discussed in the workshop about maybe the possibility of needing a second treatment plant. We think that's beyond the scope of this 10-year window, but we'll want to have some debt capacity to address that if needed. So what you might see as time goes by, here, we wouldn't be at 50%, we'd be at 46 or maybe a little bit lower in order to have that available for the new treatment facility. You know, that's obviously a conversation for years to come, but just to point that out. That's the water funding plan. How do we compare to other local and regional providers on our monthly residential water bill? Currently, we're $16.45, and you can also see the customer charge components and the usage components. I will point out here that on water, that we are the lowest monthly customer charge of our comparison group here, which is the local utility districts and also several regional large cities. So we're currently second lowest among the group with 3 years of $1 increases. We would move from $16.45 to $19.45. Our competitive position would move from second to third. But as we've talked about several times earlier, not everybody else is going to stay static over that 3-year period. They will all have increases of some magnitude, and most certainly Chattanooga would. So again, if we look at this 3 years out, we would definitely be second lowest and potentially even the cheapest. So that might be a stretch with First Utility. So that's our comparison on the residential water bills. And then commissioners, just to close, what we discussed today and what we'd be looking at as potential official action items for the August meeting, it is 2 electric rate adjustments. It is 3 water rate adjustments. Also for water, we propose that you authorize the issuance of water debt, water bonds for next fiscal year, $25 million, and those would be going out the 30-year maturities. And then in addition to that, because the budget you adopted in May was that base budget, it didn't have those additional Century $2 that for electric and water. So we would be requesting an amendment to the budget appropriation of $7.2 million for electric and $3.2 million for water. So that's covered in the budget for next fiscal year. And that's the presentation. I'd be happy to answer any other questions you might have.
You're pretty well satisfied that the funding levels over the next 10 years with these increases would be sufficient to operate the utilities. Is that a fair assumption?
I am, based upon what our projected level of expenditures are today. With respect to O&M, I'm relatively confident capital, there can be things that come up that you just can't foresee today that might need for us to recalibrate to some extent. But I don't think it would be anything major.
And it looks to me that we're fairly conservative in the amount of replacement work we're going to do. And understanding what Bruce said, but I mean, if we're replacing 20% of the poles over the next 10 years, that's just 2 out of every 10. My question, and we talked, and I know Tom, you talked about this last time, is why would we go ahead and do these rates? I understand the TVA could change their formulas, but what's the theory of waiting? Why not do this for 10 years? What is the negative answer to that? I mean, if it doesn't work 2 years from now, the board can change it. But at least there's a framework that you guys can work with to understand that we can get this done, and it doesn't have to be revisited. And so tell me why wouldn't we go ahead, if we're going to bite the bullet, why wouldn't we just do it and understand that we want this thing we can put behind us?
A plan is a plan, right? We're doing a plan for 10 years. It's my biggest problem.
2 comments. One is, and this is just what have others done, excuse me. In looking primarily on the wastewater side, when we've done rate comparisons, especially when we got under the consent decree, you would see that many systems implemented multiple or adopted multiple rate increases going out. Just my personal observation was, I don't know if I ever saw one going out further than 5 years, for what it's worth on that. I know, and the other comment is just related to maybe the makeup of future boards. And are you going ahead and, from a fiduciary perspective, adopting rate increases that further boards may have to undo, and is that an issue or a concern as well? But your point is valid, and I'm not aware. I'll defer to Ms. Roach on this if there's anything statutory that would prohibit that. But
I'm not aware there is. It's our conservative approach. I understand what you're saying, and if you feel strongly about it, we can consider that.
I mean, if we're taking the debt aspect of it and we're committing to it, I don't know why we wouldn't commit to the increase aspect of it. I mean, I think they go hand in glove in terms of being able to fund it. And if we're going to, and certainly we could change the debt portion of it, but I'd be for going ahead and doing the whole thing. And does it step on the toes of future boards? Maybe. But maybe it should have been done 10 years ago. So, and I'm not going off. I'm just saying maybe we wouldn't have to do this to this level had we done more some time ago.
I waffle back and forth. I initially started out thinking that we should hard code this 10 years down the road, and I sort of, in my mind, backed away and thought, well, let's go ahead and pass a couple of years worth of rate increases and come up with a framework for which future boards can make reference, but I still do waffle back and forth. We basically set in stone 10 to 15 years worth of wastewater. Now, we did it under different circumstances because in essence we were forced to. But, here again, I don't know.
I think the key is
when we do a debt issue, when we do a bond issue, we're basically, affecting the next 20 or 30 years, at least insofar as that bond issue is concerned. So, there's validity to that point of view. I know this is engaging in speculation, especially on a topic like TVA, which is even more dangerous. But what could TVA do? And again, I understand the danger of speculation, but what could TVA do to a rate structure that would cause us to say, wow, that's so significant that we're gonna put on hold our plans to improve our infrastructure?
It wouldn't be that we would stop our construction programs. The only concern was that they may change the structure, the classes and such, and we would have to come back to the board anyway and redo all our rates as a result of that. That is
It
the-
wouldn't be that we wouldn't have the projects or spend the money. We may
Right.
have to collect the revenue in a different method based on new classes that we create or something like that.
Okay.
But the need's still there.
The need is
Yes,
still
the
there, and
need
whatever
would be-
TVA did
yes.
would not stop us from doing our Century 2
No.
programs. That was all from just a rate structure perspective. And
I'm more comfortable with the 5 instead of the 10. I just don't think that I should be able to make a decision for someone else coming in, and everything changes, it changes so much. So 5 years is good for me, we could go back at any point and change that. But for today, we've just gotten this, and just kind of making a decision. I would feel more comfortable not doing the 10 years. I don't think that
But you-
other people coming in, because they can add that if they thought it was a great thing, or whoever else comes on. The 2 and the 3 years is great with me, and up to 5, 10 years is kind of pushing it for me. I just don't have that comfort level to make a decision for other board members. I mean, 3 or 4 of us are gonna be off of here by that time, and we're making decisions for something that I don't have a crystal ball.
Yeah, and my concern with going too far out, again, I know too much of the details on from the rate structure perspective, but it's going ahead in the next couple of months and trying to make a decision as far as, okay, how much of that goes to the customer charge, how much of that goes to energy, and residential is one thing, but even it can become more complex when you get into the commercial industrial rate classes. And that's just the rate making side of it. To go, especially going out 10 years and trying to foresee what those components could be, I struggle with that, to be honest with you.
I think we're making a plan that's good, but still leaves some flexibility. It may be that we want to have a higher rate 2 or 3 years from now. Whatever circumstances, people are saving energy, the rates are going down, or there's more water saving some way or another, and then they can swallow higher rates. I think while the variables don't look like they're that going to change that much, I think there's things that could, that might allow us to make a little bit different decision. I can't imagine, but I think if we go with a 2 or 3 year plan with these rates, and then craft a discussion, a longer plan that says, yes, this is the way we think it should be. We've outlined what we want to do without committing. We still have a little bit of flexibility, but we've said this is what we want to do. I don't see any harm in that.
Would it make more sense to do 3 for both of them? Again, the only reason we're doing 2 on electric was just because of the TVA structure.
See, I look at it differently. I look at it from the standpoint that we're making a decision as to whether Century 2 and Century 2 really is a plan that ultimately is going to be a lot longer than 10 years even. That we're making a decision that Century 2 is important to the long-term health of KUB and our customers. And if we're making that commitment, then not committing to funding it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And I could go the 10 years, but I certainly don't know why we wouldn't commit to a 5-year plan. I mean, you all present us 5-year budgets, and we're planning out 5 years. That's a very comfortable length of time in my mind. But I want us to commit to Century 2. And for those of us who had to go through wastewater, we don't ever want to get into a situation again. I always say this, because this is one of the more important things to me about
No choice.
no choice, but my role on the board is not just today, but it's looking to the future. And there's no reflection on what decisions we made in the past, but maybe if we had been a little more concerned about the future of wastewater, we may still have operated under order, even then, but it may not have been exactly in the same situation. So, I believe strongly in Century 2 and what is being proposed to us for the future. I think we have to do that for the long-term health of KUB and our customers. So I don't have no problem also at the same time committing the funding to do that. And they can always come back if there are circumstances, but I don't want them to have circumstances that somebody gets very political about. We've had, mayors and all kinds of situations that have put us in difficult situations and make decisions based on bad facts, people or whatever. But so to me, we're committing to a plan, a long-term plan, and we ought to commit at least to some degree a longer term of funding for that plan.
I want to echo, and I understand, I do understand, but I think for the, not just for the customers' sake, to know that we're engaged how to pay for it, as opposed to just saying, yeah, it's a great idea, we need to do this, but we're not really necessarily going to step up and make a tough decision to have it paid. So, and much less what y'all have in your terms of being able to plan, and knowing that this is going to be available for some extended period. I think we make a big mistake moving short. 5 years to me would be, I've said what my thought on this. Maybe I'll sleep on it.
Well, it may be an issue of semantics, although an important one. I mean, on the one hand, if we were to approve 3 years worth of rate increases and then in the form of some resolution express our preference for this plan in the future and urge future boards to carry out that plan, we're asking future boards to take action to approve rate increases at that time. On the other hand, if we decide that we want to go ahead now and